You fine?
The story begins under the unforgiving sun of a dusty Afghanistan village, where Jake, a US Army medic, is dragged forward by a group of armed men. Her hands are bound tightly, and the crowd around her chants with rising fury. At the center of it all is Amir, the feared terrorist leader. Jake is shoved to her knees as villagers gather with stones in their hands. Amir raises his arm, announcing to the crowd and accusing Jake of having been caught disrespecting their religion, and that justice will be served. He gives a stone to each of her teammates who were also caught in their mission, and orders them to throw them at her. At first, they're hesitant, but seeing how seriously Amir is standing on business, they throw the first set of stones. Known not to tolerate any slander on their religion, the Islamic people follow suit and start ravaging her with hard rocks, just as the first wave of stones is about to be exhausted. Chaos erupts. Gunfire breaks out in the distance, scattering the crowd. 2 fully loaded choppers have been sent from America with the sole purpose of rescuing Jake. She tries to tell them to rescue the rest of her teammates, but things get so heated that they barely manage to escape alive with one of the choppers. Months later, in Quetta International Girls High School, a girl named Badia and her friends hang out in the school bathroom to talk about interesting events going on in their lives. Suddenly, a group of ISIS terrorists led by Amir invades their school, killing all the teachers and abducting the students.
Which one is the whore Durrani's daughter?
Their target is finding Badiya Durrani, the Minister of Education's daughter. Being in the bathroom, the girls have an edge. They quietly slip out and head to the rooftop to hide. When Amir realizes that Badia is nowhere to be found, he heads back into the school with a group of men in search of her. The girls try to escape, but are caught in a matter of time, and some of them get thrown off the rooftop to their deaths. The remaining girls, who are also daughters of prominent government officials and foreign dignitaries, are abducted alongside Badia. Only 7 girls are taken into custody from the school, some of whom are Americans.
For the daughters of the American diplomats.
The terrorists make their message clear. They demand $10 million for each girl, along with the release of Sheikh al-Shamali, whom they claim to be a holy man, imprisoned by the corrupt Taliban government. News of the incident travels fast, and the US attempts a rescue mission by sending a Delta Force unit, but unfortunately, the mission collapses into carnage, with no survivors making it out.
After that, I don't think I'll pick a fight.
Running out of options, they reach out to Jake, who is still haunted by failures she carries like ghosts. When she's summoned, she doesn't need to be told the mission is dangerous. She just accepts, because she has an uneven score with Amir, and would really love to settle things with him.
Canadian passport and ID.
She gets a fake ID forged under the name Jessica Rabbit to keep her undercover. After landing from her long flight, Jake barely has time to stretch her legs before she's scooped up by Malik, a driver who doubles as a local guide.
People drive crazy in Pakistan.
Malik drives like the roads belong to him, honking at goats and popples with equal aggression, until he finally delivers her straight to the team's base. Waiting for her is a group of women who look like they'd rather be anywhere else than greeting the recruit. The vibe in the room is colder than the airplane food Jake just endured. This squad is not your ordinary task force. They're disguised as an NGO medical unit, meant to slip quietly into places where any soldier in uniform would spark a war before even asking for directions. Jake was sent to aid the team in the mission of rescuing the girls. Jake sizes them up one by one. There's Rocky, the hard-boiled mechanic, who treats engines like family, but humans like faulty spare parts. Geek, The tech wizard is
one
known
named
for
Secret
hacking
Secure
signals
Network.
and surveillance systems faster
Share,
than you can say
no
bad
relation.
Wi-Fi. Shooter,
Shooter
the
it is.
weapons expert,
You are-
has hands so steady, it's as if coffee never existed in her life. The bomb, the team's explosives prodigy, is far too comfortable handling things that go boom.
Oh, and here's our medic.
And Medic is the calm, steady one, armed with compassion and gauze in equal measure. Standing awkwardly among them is Doctor Mike, a civilian doctor who would rather be anywhere else but got dragged into this circus because he just wanted to deliver supplies to the NGO. Together, with Jake reluctantly thrown into the mix, they make up a squad of angels in disguise. Later, when the team is still warming up to each other, Jake heads off to an internet cafe. The place is dim, buzzing with old fans and humming computers that look like they're one angry click away from retirement. She manages to get in touch with Awina, an old ally. Jake asks for information on where the kidnapped girls are hidden. Awina, clearly not in the mood for reunions, claims she has nothing.
I'm Taliban and loyal to my country.
And pleads with Jake to leave her out of this. But Jake doesn't budge. She simply throws down an ultimatum like someone ordering takeout with no intention of paying. Their conversation gets cut short when Travis, the so-called task force leader sent from America, interrupts with a call. Travis tells Jake to meet him at an undisclosed location, where he briefs her about their next move.
How many people are you telling about your secret plan?
Not long after, Camilla Durrani, the minister, strolls in wearing a disguise that fools absolutely no one. She's desperate, worried sick about her daughter, and makes it clear she's willing to pay the ransom herself if the Americans fail. She has a chilling prediction that her daughter will be executed first,
So the Americans use some back channel to pay for their own.
paraded as an example to force the Americans into terror and adherence to their demands. Before leaving, she tells them she's arranged a safe passage across the border through an old friend, sparing them the risk of being caught too soon. With no time to waste, the team sets out, piling into Malik's truck. Malik now has backup in the form of his older brother Abbas, who seems to enjoy correcting Malik's directions more than anything else. Together, the brothers serve as guides, while the women load up the medical supplies that double as their cover. On the course of their journey, they eventually hit a checkpoint where soldiers stop them. What starts as routine questioning turns sour fast. The soldiers begin ripping open boxes of medical supplies and tossing them around like children, unwrapping unwanted Christmas presents. Jake can feel the tension rising when their ass gets saved by a superior officer, who steps in calmly. Unlike his reckless subordinates, this man seems to have some sense. He halts the chaos, grants the task force official permission to continue, and even hands them a number to call if they run into more trouble. Meanwhile, at the terrorist's base, Amir sends for one of the American hostages and promises to release her. All she has to do is deliver a letter to the Taliban police station. The task force, however, arrives at the city where Sheikh al-Shamali is imprisoned. Travis sets out with the bomb and shooter to fetch some weapons, which he had kept hidden somewhere in the city. Jake, on the other hand, puts on a disguise and meets up with Awina at the city outskirts for leads. Arriving at the location, Travis and the girls are blown to see that the entire building where the weapons were stored has been destroyed, almost like the ops had leads on them. One of Amir's men takes the American girl to the police station, where she delivers the note to the officers she meets there. In an unexpected twist of events, the car that the man uses to drive her down to the station
for betraying your faith and your
explodes after he runs out of it, destroying the entire building with everyone inside. With no real weapons or ammunition, the mission is hanging by a thread, and everyone knows it. The team sits in silence, staring at the meager supplies in front of them. Bandages, syringes, and a few boxes of antibiotics aren't exactly going to win them a firefight. It's like going into a boxing ring armed with nothing but a first aid kit and a polite smile. Realizing that they are about one unlucky step away from failure, Abbas proposes that they take a more aggressive approach. If they don't have weapons, they'll just have to steal some from the base, and the team agrees to it. The plan is to infiltrate one of the soldiers' bases in the city and strip it of every rifle and bullet they can carry. But with their small numbers, even Jake admits the odds are terrible, so they hatch a different plan altogether. That same night, while the city sleeps, they create chaos by triggering an explosion in an empty building not too far from the base. The blast shakes windows, rattles the ground, and immediately draws soldiers out in panic. Having already lost a police station to a bombing earlier in the day, the troops assume it's the same terrorists striking again. Their target base empties, soldiers sprinting to deal with the smoke and fire. For the task force, dealing with the handful of guards left behind is like finding an unlocked front door at a bank. They slip in quietly and take down the few soldiers. Within minutes, the base is theirs. The women strip it of weapons, ammo, grenades, and anything that looks remotely useful. For the first time, they actually feel like they have a fighting chance. Geek, with her eyes glued to the flickering feed of surveillance cameras, immediately sounds the alarm. The soldiers who went chasing the smoke have realized the trick and are already on their way back. The team has little time. They scatter around the compound, planting landmines and makeshift traps. By the time the soldiers storm back in, expecting to reclaim their post, they walk straight into a symphony of explosions. Chaos erupts as mines go off, and soldiers stumble into ambushes. The task force fights back fiercely, but they also know it won't be long before the enemy regroups. As they retreat through the smoke, disaster strikes. Dr. Mike, the reluctant civilian who never signed up for any of this madness, is hit by a bullet. He collapses on the ground, clutching his side. Jake orders the team to turn back and get him, but everyone else shouts her down. Running back into enemy fire for a dead man is suicide, they argue. After a painful pause, she makes the call that they're going back. The team turns around, fighting their way back through the chaos to grab Dr. Mike's body. They succeed, but at a heavy cost. Travis, their leader from America, is struck down in the process. When they finally escape the base, Rocky, who rarely shows emotion beyond irritation, finally erupts in anger. She blames Jake outright for the reckless decision that cost them Travis as well. Travis's final words still hang. He used his last breath to beg Jake to bring the girls home. Needing to bury the dead with dignity, the team calls the number the checkpoint officer gave them earlier. But Jake doesn't trust anyone to stick around voluntarily.
It wasn't.
So while the man answers their call, Geek quietly tracks his location through the line. The next morning, they arrive at his modest home and plead with him to give them ground to bury two of their own. Reluctantly, he agrees, and Jake and Abbas start to dig. While they work, the soldier makes a phone call, summoning the minister. Camilla Durrani arrives quickly, expressing genuine sorrow for Jake's loss. She also comes bearing a briefcase, stacked with $10 million for her daughter's safety. Camilla is terrified her daughter's time is running out. Checking the money, Jake discovers that every single bill is counterfeit.
I assume that's why you're here? To escape?
The minister, without batting an eye, explains that it won't matter because the terrorists aren't American, and it'll take them a while to realize they've been handed funny money. After Camilla departs, Jake takes control again. She orders everyone to smash their phones and burn their IDs. From now on, if any of them get caught, they should claim to be American citizens. Better to be prisoners of politics than nameless captives with no leverage. Meanwhile, far away, Amir, The man pulling the strings of this nightmare summons Badia, the minister's daughter. He gives her a grotesque choice that if she agrees to marry him, she can spare her friends from being executed. Of course, he has no intention of releasing them, but if she agrees to his demands, he'd marry them off to his most loyal and brutal fighters. All he expects from her is to become his bride.
Because weak women make weak children.
And bear him powerful and ruthless children like himself. Awina meets up with the team in a while.
You mustn't have left witnesses.
And gives them intel about the location of Sheikh al-Shamali, who was being transported to a more secure prison.
Seek out a prison and trade him.
Jake decides they intercept the transportation and hijack the prisoner to negotiate with Amir through him.
Wants money.
She asks Awine to tender her phone, and Awina replies that she wasn't dumb enough to bring it. Advance with the mission. They set traps and lie in ambush while the prisoner gets transported, and manage to capture him successfully. But Rocky gets into a terrible accident during the mission, and is stuck under a boss. She tells the team to leave her behind as Taliban soldiers begin to arrive at the venue. She promises not to disclose her identity. Later that evening, Rocky is killed on live TV by the Taliban forces, who publicly announce her to be among the ISIS terrorists. Jake realizes they have been betrayed by Awina, who has been feeding information to the terrorists and is currently bringing them straight to them with a tracker. She knocks her out, leaving the money behind with her and Sheikh al-Shamali, while the rest of them evacuate immediately. Jake had hidden a tracker in the stash of money, which they used to secretly follow the terrorists back to their base. The hideout is a cavernous warren carved into the mountainside. The team disguises itself in flowing burqas, but beneath the fabric, rifles are strapped to ribs, knives pressed against thighs, and grenades tucked into folds. They sneak into the base through a secret passage and set up explosives in every corner. After confirming the hostages' safety and locations, Jake reaches out to a rescue team of choppers.
Time to make your choice.
To secure her friend's safety, Badia agrees to the marriage proposal with Amir, and Sheikh al-Shamali is made to marry them together. He gets killed after the ceremony. In a couple of minutes, Amir's men report to him that the money is fake, and that they also found a tracker inside it. Amir gets furious and kills Awina on the spot. He orders that all women be brought to him, and that they take off their burqas for identification. That's when the retaliation starts. The explosions start to go off, destroying most of the soldiers and causing confusion in the camp. Jake and Medic head to the cage where the hostages are kept and lead them out. The Taliban soldier holds the exit long enough for the hostages to slip through with the machine gun at the back of a van, hurling a grenade that rattles the walls and buries a group of militants in rubble. Shooter provides massive support. She covers fire, with precise shots dropping enemies before they can aim, while Medic helps in getting the girls into the vehicle. Malek helps with the explosions as well, destroying as many terrorists as he can. Deeper inside, Jake finally comes face to face with Amir. He recognizes her instantly, spits curses at her, calls her an invader, a devil dressed as a woman. He lunges first, a wild swing with a dangerous-looking machete. Jake does her best to block his attacks with a rifle, which gets destroyed shortly after. He slams her against the rock wall, his forearm crushing her throat. Seeing death flash before her eyes, her adrenaline rush takes over, and she manages to overpower him and snatch his weapon, which she eventually uses to slit his throat. The Taliban police covering for them get shot by one of the terrorists. Medic tries to resume his place, but she gets her head grazed by a bullet. Luckily for her, it's not fatal. Malik sees her and immediately drags her back into the car. Jake sees Geek under some rumblings of explosions and tries to save her, but Geek asks her to go without him and that she'd buy time for them. The rest of the terrorists start to close in, so Jake is left with no other choice but to leave her behind. Immediately as she leaves, Geek pulls out a different explosive device and obliterates herself and a good number of the terrorists, also sealing their way. Malik drives the girls out of the cave, where the long-awaited choppers arrive at last. They quickly usher the girls aboard the choppers, which immediately take off afterwards. As the helicopters lift into the sky, Jake doesn't board. She turns instead to Malik and climbs into the passenger seat of his battered truck. The two of them then drive away from the cave while listening to loud music. Thank you for sticking to the end of my video. Please do me the biggest favor by leaving a like, comment, and subscribe. And I hope to see you in the next video.
A truck slowly rolls into a cafe parking lot, and moments later, officers step out to grab coffee. That calm disappears instantly when armed men arrive, ordering the cops to cooperate if they want everyone to stay alive.
No, bro, we're not here for you. Don't even think about it.
The driver refuses to play along, forcing the gunman to breach the truck, and the situation explodes. And within seconds, 2 officers are down. Some members of the crew are clearly rattled by how fast things escalated, but the mission keeps moving until more law enforcement arrives. The first responding officers barely make it to the scene before getting taken out, and once reinforcements pour in, the place turns into a full firefight, and 1 gang member goes down. The officers are eventually overwhelmed, giving the crew enough room to escape with the truck, while another member working remotely guides them through a safer route. Back at the hideout, the team lead is furious with the man who opened fire on the officers, blaming him for turning the robbery into a bloodbath, but the rest of the crew barely see the issue. Later that morning, Nick, a county sheriff, returns home and quietly sneaks inside, only to walk straight into trouble as his wife confronts him over a text he accidentally sent her instead of the woman he's cheating with. Fed up with the constant infidelity and how absent he's been as a husband and father due to his job, she packs a few things, takes the kids, and leaves despite his desperate attempts to stop her. After getting word of the previous night's attack, the sheriff arrives at the scene almost immediately. He's briefed on the stolen truck being empty and the clean professional escape route the gang used, and from that alone, he concludes they're dealing with more than just a random crew. While he orders his team to go through every piece of evidence carefully, 1 gang member spies on the cops from a distance. Not long after, a federal agent arrives and the exchange between both men turns tense almost instantly. The sheriff reminds the suited agent that the case hasn't gone federal yet, making it clear he doesn't appreciate the intrusion. The argument eventually fades into forced laughter and fake smiles, though it's obvious neither man can stand the other. Nick and his team begin hunting for whoever pulled off the truck robbery, and their first lead is Donnie, an ex-convict connected to Ray. Meanwhile, the suspect is working behind the bar when he notices an ID card left behind by a customer and quietly pockets it for himself. Before the final customers leave, they praise him for being sharp and always knowing exactly what people want. Once the place empties out, the cop walks in and strikes up a friendly conversation with the bartender like nothing's wrong. Not long after, Donnie closes up for the night, gets into his car, and prepares to leave. But the officer suddenly appears, hits him with a taser, then knocks him unconscious. He wakes up to find officers casually mingling with women nearby, almost as if nothing serious is going on. Still disoriented, the gang member tries to claim he's innocent, but they shut him down immediately by showing him a photo of him with Ray along with a reminder of a prior speeding arrest. Shortly after, the women are cleared out, and the tone shifts sharply as the interrogation begins. The boss presses hard, demanding to know why he's tied to that other guy and why he's involved with that crew at all. Donnie insists he's done nothing wrong, claiming those guys only ever show up at his bar to drink. That answer pushes the sheriff over the edge. He warns him bluntly that the squad would rather permanently silence him than arrest him, then grabs him by the neck and starts choking the life out of him. The pressure works almost immediately as the ex-convict finally admits he's part of the crew, though he insists he's only the driver and doesn't know much about the operations. He explains that he once told a regular customer at the bar, an ex-military man, that he needed extra cash, and that conversation eventually connected him to the crew leader. At their first meeting, the boss tests tests him with a series of questions before putting him through a driving challenge, where the man proves himself behind the wheel and earns the gang leader's respect. Not long after, he's officially brought into the crew and pulled into a job. When the cop asks about the money from the robbery, the suspect claims he knows nothing, explaining that the crew never tells him details beyond his role as driver. Before releasing him, the officers warn that they'll be in touch, then instruct him to behave like nothing ever happened. The next day, members of the crew pick him up and drive him through the city, eventually pointing out the Los Angeles branch of the Federal Reserve, a place that's reportedly faced over 50 robbery attempts without anyone ever making it past the lobby. Ray then breaks down the bank's intense security setup for the team. Armed guards everywhere, cameras covering every angle, instant background checks running through multiple agencies, and a heavily protected underground vault. He also explains that every bill in circulation carries a serial number, making all cash traceable, and whenever old notes are brought in, their serials are wiped from the system before they get cut into pieces. While the police team works on identifying possible members of the crew, the gang leader explains the mission. The Federal Reserve regularly sends worn-out bills worth millions into shredders before dumping them, and his plan is to intercept the money before it gets destroyed. When the team asks how they're supposed to bypass that level of security at the lobby, the boss calmly says they won't be going through the front, they'll enter through the back door. Back at the station, the top cop digs through old robbery and heist files, gradually linking several unsolved jobs to faces connected to the crew. The more connections he makes, the more convinced he becomes that taking those men down could close multiple cases at once. As the officers leave the building, the sheriff is suddenly approached by a lawyer who hands him divorce papers, catching him completely off guard. The next day, the bartender enters the Federal Reserve disguised as a delivery worker, while the cops monitor him from a distance. After clearing security, he's buzzed inside and then heads straight for the cafeteria, dropping off the packages like a routine delivery. Instead of leaving immediately, he slips into the restroom where he carefully hides a package inside the ceiling before walking back out without drawing attention. Watching from afar, the cops are confused by the move and can't figure out what the skilled driver is setting up in a bank. That uncertainty pushes them back to the crew's previous robberies, trying to spot a pattern and piece things together. At Lavu's house, his daughter's boyfriend shows up to pick her, and after the initial pleasantries, the gangster pulls the young man aside for a private talk. Surrounded by his crew, he tells the boy to treat his daughter right, mixing the warning with subtle threats, before one of the men suddenly charges at the kid just to make the point clear that messing up isn't an option. Later that night, the criminal crew is having dinner with family when the stubborn sheriff suddenly shows up and casually starts talking to Donnie, who clearly wants no part of it. Before long, Nick shifts his attention to the gang leader, throwing sharp comments his way and provoking him enough to rise from his seat and push back. Another officer quickly steps in before things explode and drags the sheriff away, but the damage is already done, as suspicion immediately falls on the driver for his role bringing police attention to them. Back at the hideout, the crew corners the suspect, questioning whether he's secretly working with the cops. He denies it, but once a gun is pointed at his head, he admits the police grabbed him before. Still, he insists he never talked, explaining that the cops already had a rough idea of who the crew members were, so they eventually let him go. Even with the confession, the boss shuts the concern down and announces the mission will proceed exactly as planned, insisting the tactical police squad should be aware of the mission's date. That same evening, the cop barges into a dinner where his estranged wife is with her new partner and friends. He turns the entire room into a scene, signing the divorce papers in front of everyone. He briefly escalates into aggression, even daring them to call the police on him before leaving with a final uncomfortable remark about intimacy.
You wondering what that thing is on our ass? It's a tattoo. My name, Big Nick O'Brien.
Later, the speedster meets with the cop again and challenges the intrusion the previous night, but the sheriff makes it clear it's no big deal. When pressed for details about the job, the gang member only reveals the date, refusing to give the location, but warns them to come prepared. Afterward, the law enforcer visits a shooting range and crosses paths with members of the crew. There's a silent, tense standoff between them, but neither side acts, and the crew eventually continues their routine and leaves. The next day, after a reckless night out, the tough cop is approached by ex-con himself after setting him up with a lady. Despite having the opportunity to eliminate him, the thief simply walks past without a word, leaving the officer unsettled just a little. Later, Nick visits his daughter at school, and for a brief moment, the tension in his life fades as they reconnect, both clearly wanting things to feel normal again. Back in his car, the weight of everything catches up to him and he breaks down in tears before regaining his composure. D-Day arrives. The crew gears up for the mission while the police prepare for a counter-operation, each side fully aware that something big is about to happen. The gang moves into a local bank wearing masks.
Get down on the ground! Down on the ground!
And within moments, hostages are taken and the building is locked down under threat as everyone is ordered to cooperate if they want to stay alive. The bank manager is forced to contact authorities and deliver the demand, $10 million for the release of the hostages, with a clear warning that if it isn't met, one hostage will be dropped every hour. Minutes later, sirens echo from a distance, but the tactical team is already irritated. Every passing unit risks disrupting their containment strategy. The negotiator quickly attempts to establish contact with the crew, but the exchange quickly breaks down, and in response, the criminals drag a hostage away, and a gunshot rings out inside the building, confirming the threat is real. The sound triggers an argument between the federal agent and the squad boss, clashing over whether patience or force is the better approach, with neither willing to yield.
Fuck you! Yeah, you!
The negotiator calls again, but this time the branch manager is put on the line to deliver the warning clearly. Secure the money, or another hostage goes down. Shortly after, Ray directly contacts the tough cop. The conversation is short and tense, with both men trading pressure and ego, before the call abruptly ends. Moments later, an explosion rips through part of the bank, signaling that the vault has been breached and escalating the situation even further. While a remote crew member taps into the Federal Reserve's communication lines for updates, the smart officer spots the deception. Using that opening, he leads his team inside the bank, only to find the main floor eerily empty, with hostages tied and blindfolded, but no visible criminals. A deeper search leads them into the lower sections of the building, where they find the hostage that was supposedly dropped alive and well. They also discover a tunnel has been recently used, and when officers go through, it ultimately leads them nowhere, leaving them more confused than before. Meanwhile, Ray and his right-hand man infiltrate the Federal Reserve itself by posing as regular officers assigned to transport currency. After clearing security checks, they are granted access deeper into the facility and toward the vault, while the rest of the crew positions themselves at key points inside the operation zone. At the crime scene, Nick storms out in frustration, leaving the federal agents to comb through an empty setup that tells them almost nothing. Inside the Federal Reserve, the cash-counting operation begins by the book, with Donnie positioned inside a currency transport cart surrounded by bundled bills. Outside, another member of the crew cuts the power, forcing a temporary shutdown of operations and causing the vault protocols to loosen for a brief window. Using that disruption, the inside man slips out and quickly gathers cash, narrowly avoiding detection as he moves. To further misdirect security, a gang member jams the communication systems, throwing the staff into confusion and drawing a guard away from the vault area. While the guard goes to get staff back into the vault, the insider finishes his extraction, pushing cash into a disposal bin before quickly hiding inside a ventilation shaft just as personnel begin returning to the vault. Meanwhile, the tactical squad escalates coordination across law enforcement agencies, placing everyone on alert while stressing the need for silence to avoid tipping the criminals off. Even though the staff counting the currency notice small inconsistencies, they dismiss it and continue the operation. Meanwhile, the smart thief slips into the restroom again, retrieves the hidden package he stashed earlier, and quietly delivers it back to the same woman without drawing attention. Inside the facility, one of the truck drivers loads a bin filled with cash and calmly exits, signaling a second driver outside who immediately creates a diversion using a decoy vehicle. The fake delivery guy returns toward the lobby, but security stops him when his name doesn't appear on the visitor register for that day. He brushes it off, claiming an error from staff in the previous shift, but the desk officer only lets him pass after a while. At the same time, the recipient of the earlier delivery complains that the food was bad and calls security to detain him, but by then, the thief's not in sight. One of Ray's men intercepts the decoy truck carrying the supposed stolen cash, hijacks it, and reroutes it to their extraction point, where the packages are consolidated and all traceable evidence is wiped clean. Meanwhile, the fake delivery guy is cornered by the police squad, beaten and pressured until he gives up key information. At that moment, the tech member within the gang catches wind of the situation and immediately alerts the crew that their man has been compromised. As the gang attempts to escape and the police close in on them in a traffic jam, both sides realize what's about to happen and gear up for confrontation, while the sheriff makes one thing clear: no criminal leaves alive. When the law enforcement enforcers advances on foot, Ray opens fire heavily, dropping one officer instantly and escalating the standoff into full combat. Soon, it escalates into a full-blown shootout, with both sides diving for cover as the other guy remains cuffed inside a police car in the middle of the chaos. During the exchange, police manage to take down a gang member with one shot to the knee and another to the head, but Ray quickly retaliates, hitting an officer and leaving him partially crippled. As the fight spreads off the road, one officer flanks the scene and shoots Lavu, dropping him to the ground and leaving him critically wounded. Nick pauses briefly to check on him, but is told to keep moving. He pushes forward, fires at another officer, and manages to hit him in the arm. The pursuit intensifies as the gang boss drops his bigger weapon to move faster, but the tough cop closes in and gets shot in the hand during the chase. The gang leader nearly clears a fence, but the sheriff fires through and hits him mid-movement, slowing down his escape. While the previously wounded man struggles to stay alive but fails under police watch, the remaining top figures face off one last time. Nick gains the upper hand, landing the shots that end the fight, even as the wounded Ray tries to fire back one last time. They return to where the shootout began and discover their prisoner has escaped. But what confuses them more is the crew's cargo itself. What they thought was stolen cash turns out to be nothing but crushed paper bundles. The federal agent arrives and consoles the sheriff over the loss of one of his men, while also pointing out that every dollar at the Federal Reserve has been fully accounted for. That contradiction deepens the mystery, pushing the sheriff to revisit earlier leads, starting with Donnie's bar, but he's told the man no longer works there. Sitting alone with a beer, the sheriff watches Federal Reserve employees enter the bar, while he also notices a photo on the wall showing the crew casually playing football together. That image finally clicks something into place, and a new theory takes shape. Sometime later, the tech specialist and the truck driver are seen relaxing in a bar, while the speedster, now disguised with a beard, works at another pub. It's revealed that Donnie was the real mastermind all along, feeding Ray the details and letting him front the operation while quietly pulling the strings from behind. Back at the bar, the smart guy resumes his routine, casually asking customers about where they work, setting the stage for whatever comes next. A beautiful woman dressed as an air hostess walks calmly into a building while staying in contact with her team outside. Moments later, she gives the signal, prompting masked men posing as police officers to pull into the hangar in a patrol car. At first, they act like responding cops, but the disguise drops almost immediately as they pull weapons and order everyone to the ground.
Get on your knees!
The crew storms the plane, secures every possible threat within seconds, then retrieves the package they came for. The entire operation is smooth and unbelievably fast. Real officers are alerted, but by the time they respond, the criminals are already long gone. Back in LA, the tough cop is in a courthouse restroom when he breaks down, carelessly tossing aside his wedding ring and the final mark of his marriage ending. Later at a bar, he catches news of a major diamond heist involving millions in stolen goods, pulling his attention straight back into the case. Meanwhile, Donnie, now going by Gene, joins his crew in a car as they brief him on the next job and confirm the new identity he'll be operating under. The woman with them welcomes him into the city of Nice, and he slips into his new cover without resistance. That evening, in LA, the cop forcefully enters a woman's car and orders her to drive without asking questions. He takes her to a seaport, leads her into a shipping container, and demands everything she knows about Donnie and Ray's operation, focusing especially on what really happened to the stolen money from the last job. The woman turns the tables, showing him a recording of an intimate moment between them, then calmly warns she'll release it publicly if he continues threatening her. She agrees to talk, but only in exchange for a cut of the money, and the cop reluctantly accepts. Back in France, the smooth operator meets Chava, a lady who works at the Bourse, alongside Giovanna, one of his crew members, and speaks with her in French. He hands over a package and explains it's connected to his family's business dealings in Botswana, a cover story that immediately impresses the lady, making her agree to help him get established at the Bourse. After clearing security at the facility, he carefully observes every camera angle and security checkpoint, mentally mapping the entire system. He's then escorted to meet the concierge, who processes his access to the center and then shows him his new office, marking the start of his integration into the system. When he asks for space inside the diamond vault, the official tells him there's no room available, an immediate problem for the plan. As he walks away discussing the setback with a crew member, an unknown figure watches him quietly from a distance. Elsewhere, in a remote town, a man reports to his boss, the octopus, that the diamonds the rich old man invested heavily in have been stolen. The revelation irritates the boss, though he keeps his composure and begins giving instructions on what needs to happen next. Meanwhile, the client introduces her new associate to a gemologist for verification. During the inspection, the expert discovers a tracker hidden inside the diamond, though he still confirms the stone itself is genuine and highly valuable. Back at the crew's hideout, Giovanna gathers everyone that forms the Pantera crew and breaks down the mission ahead, describing it as the biggest heist in history. She officially presents the clever newcomer as a key part of the operation, and when one member objects, the others quickly shut him down. She then assigns roles to each person before wrapping up the briefing. Much later, the cop arrives in France and heads straight to the police station, where a captain briefs him on the recent wave of heists and the crew suspected to be operating across Europe. The French officers pull up surveillance footage for identification, but the moment the LA cop spots his suspect on screen, he pretends not to recognize him, casually brushing it off as just another random face. Meanwhile, the crew begins tracking their next target and carefully work their way close to him, with the gang leader smoothly engaging him in a conversation while carrying out her own side of the setup. Later that evening, as the fake diamond executive returns home, he finds an unexpected visitor waiting inside. Given their history, the meeting immediately carries tension, though both men keep things oddly calm at first. The civilian eventually pulls a gun, but the cop reacts faster, disarming him and turning the weapon right back on him. Moments later, the visitor, rumored to have been kicked off the force, admits he's broke and bluntly says he wants in on the operation, whether Donnie likes it or not. That next day, the mafia's top enforcer arrives in France with one objective: recover the stolen diamonds tied to his boss. Away from the mafia, the serial thief brings the tough cop to meet the crew head, who questions him carefully before agreeing to let him in. The rest of the team remains suspicious of the outsider, so they decide he'll have to earn their trust first. Meanwhile, as the mafia get to work, teaming up with local contacts to trace where the GPS hidden inside the diamond was activated, they eventually get a promising lead after contacting some locals. That night, the heist crew heads out for drinks, with Nick tagging along. A few members warm up to him quickly, and before long, they're flooding him with alcohol, which he gladly accepts. Then the lady casually passes him a joint to try, and the second he takes a puff, he realizes it's far stronger than the usual stuff. Once the effect starts kicking in, the new guy takes advantage of the moment to get closer to the crew leader, dancing a little too intimately with her. That doesn't sit well with her ex, who's also on the team. And even after the new guy is warned to ease off, the tension keeps building. This sets the crew into a full brawl and they get thrown out of the club within minutes, with the two men connected to LA ending up on the same side of the chaos. But as they leave the scene, mafia operatives suddenly intercept them and haul them away. Out in the middle of the ocean, the men are informed that the diamond previously stolen from the plane belongs to a powerful figure known as the Octopus, and they're expected to recover them. Without wasting time, the leader throws them into the water, giving them one chance to survive and make things right. After swimming for miles and finally reaching shore, the new guy decides he wants no part of the crew anymore. Fearing the mafia could eventually come after his family, he walks away from the operation, but by the next day, he changes his mind and returns to the crew. The mission moves forward as the crew regroups once again at their base, and the fake diamond dealer breaks down everything he's learned about the Bourse, including the security gaps and routines they can exploit. Since only law enforcement level personnel can freely access the vault, the new plan is to send the new member in as Donnie's head of security. That same day, the newly appointed security chief is introduced, quietly setting the stage for what's about to hit the Diamond Center. As the crew leader helps wire him up in a suit fitted with hidden cameras, the chemistry between them quietly builds. Later at the center, the concierge escorts the new security detail into the vault to log an inventory while the rest of the crew watches through the live feed. During the walkthrough, Nick spots the specific diamond tied to the mafia. Back at the office, the cop-turned-security guy carefully explains the exact location of the mafia's stone, making it clear that recovering it has now become a top priority. Meanwhile, the team continues refining their plan, running simulations of potential vault complications and testing ways to bypass each layer of security. That night, after the concierge leaves and the entire city is distracted by a major sports game, the crew makes their move. Under the watchful eye of security cameras, which they carefully manipulate and evade, they access a nearby building, climb to the rooftop, and cross over to the top of the Bourse's building, while everyone is glued to the broadcast. With the crew leader coordinating everything remotely, they take control of the security camera feed and use it to guide their entry inside the facility. Masked and fully prepared, the team begins descending one by one through the elevator shaft, timing their movement perfectly before surveillance catches up. Once inside the building proper, they activate a device that renders them effectively invisible to the camera system, allowing them to move through monitored corridors unnoticed, while guards remain unaware of their presence. Now, at the vault door, the crew blinds the remaining cameras and quickly begin working through the layered locks, and within seconds, the final barrier gives way, revealing rows of safe deposit boxes. They move fast, ripping through compartments in search of the octopus's stone, but as each box comes up without it, frustration starts to build. As the concierge heads back from the pub, the woman coordinating the operation remotely catches wind of his movement and orders the team to grab whatever they can and prepare to exit immediately. They continue looting under pressure, but Nick stays focused on the missing diamond. After a final push through the remaining boxes, he finally locates it, and the crew moves into extraction. The center's top official then performs a routine check at the vault entrance, switches off the lights, and leaves without noticing anything unusual. Meanwhile, the crew struggles to make their way back to the rooftop exit. Their coordination holds, but as they cross back, one member nearly slips over the edge. A dropped tool crashes to the ground, triggering the security guards and raising the risk of discovery. With one member stuck alone on the rooftop, the rest of the crew escapes, and the lone member manages to stay hidden just long enough for security to pass him by. As he tries to find an exit route through the building, a guard spots him and moves in, trying to intervene, but two controlled shots to the chest drop the man without finishing him off. In a desperate attempt to escape, the crew member takes a bold leap off the building, crashing onto a parked car below. Within seconds, the rest of the team retrieves him, and they all regroup at the rallying point. The leader reminds everyone that if anyone gets captured, their share will be secured until they're out. They quickly wipe the vehicle of identifiable marks split and drive off, disappearing before law enforcement can fully respond. Back at the bourse, the head official enters the vault with security and immediately finds it completely ransacked. Realizing what has happened, he tells his team bluntly, they've just been robbed. Meanwhile, Donnie and a part of the crew are driving away when they're suddenly tailed by a faction of their own crew, now turned rival. As gunfire erupts almost instantly, the team fights back, managing to hit one target. Nick is also struck in the arm during the exchange. The chase escalates into a full highway shootout even as the driver struggles to shake the pursuers, but the situation tightens when the cop turned gangster times a shot perfectly, hitting the driver in the neck and sending one vehicle crashing out of control, leaving only one pursuing car still in the fight. The remaining attackers continue firing, and eventually Donnie's vehicle tire takes a hit, sending it crashing at the base of a hill. With no escape route left, the crew raises their hands in surrender, bracing for capture. But in a sudden twist, gunfire rains down on their attackers, dropping them before they can finish the job. While this surprises them, on closer look, they realize it's the Mafia who has intervened and saved them. The remaining crew members step forward and hand over the precious stone. After inspecting and getting satisfied, without saying much, he hands them a car key and signals for them to leave immediately. As they prepare to go, one of the crew tries to process what just happened and asks who those men really are. Nick coldly brushes it off, placing all the blame on the driver. Behind them, the Mafia quietly helps erase traces of the encounter, even handling the car to wipe evidence before the crew finally drives off. Later, the remaining team members gather at a luxury property to celebrate what they believe is the biggest heist in history. The mood is high, drinks flowing, and everyone celebrates, except the new guy, who's visibly unsettled and struggling with everything that has happened. Suddenly, French police arrive and arrest everyone at the celebration, including the new recruit. As they're being escorted out, the French police captain pulls Nick aside, separates him from the group, and quietly releases him. He then checks on him briefly, making sure he's holding up after everything. Feeling conflicted about the outcome of the operation, Nick watches as the crew members are read their rights and detained. When the captain returns, he formally acknowledges the courageous cop's role in infiltrating the group and helping bring them down, earning him a quiet nod of respect. As the police vehicles drive the arrested crew away, the betrayer watches them disappear down the road, visibly weighed down by everything that has unfolded. Much later, news of Donnie and the crew's arrest quickly spreads, eventually reaching the top Mafia enforcer, who responds with a single urgent phone call. Now, in prison, the criminal is brought in to meet a visitor. The moment he sees it's Nick, his expression hardens with resentment. When asked if turning them in made him feel any better, the cop admits it only made him feel worse. The prisoner then lashes out with words, but the officer reminds him that he once saved his life, and that he wasn't all bad to him. As he gets up to go, he quietly hands the convict a cryptic message about where to sit, without explaining why, leaving the prisoner unsettled and confused. On a sunny transfer day, the prisoner is being moved to a new facility when he notices two helicopters moving in parallel with the convoy. One lands ahead of the vehicles, the other behind, and within seconds, masked, armed men step out and take control of the road. They warn the officers not to react, quickly extract their man from the convoy, and escort him away as calmly as possible. He is taken to a secluded island where the mafia boss meets him personally. The old man tells him to relax, pointing out that if he wanted him gone, it would have already happened. He is curious about the man who managed to retrieve his precious stone, even jokingly comparing him to Houdini before laughing. But helping him break free comes with terms. Donnie now answers to him. Elsewhere, Nick is driving when he receives a message confirming that every member of the Pantera has been released, and for the first time in a while, he allows himself a small, relieved smile. It was Den of Thieves. Nick pushed himself to the absolute limit and crossed every moral line to take down the Pantera crew, only to realize that sometimes the badge doesn't mean as much as the bonds you form on the other side. But I want to hear from you guys. Do you think Nick was right to feel guilty and smile when Donnie got broken out? Or should he have stayed a loyal cop and thrown away the key? Drop your hottest takes in the comments down below and click the video popping up on your screen right now for another great movie recap.